It wasn't something I ever thought could betray me. That's what makes it feel almost cruel now. Not lipstick on a collar. Not a message lighting up my phone. Not a hotel keycard forgotten in a purse. Towels. Two pale guest hand towels folded beside a sink no one was supposed to use. That was the detail. That was the thread. And once Daniel pulled it, everything unraveled. People assume affairs end with dramatic discoveries. Someone walks in, someone sees too much, someone reads the wrong text. Reality can be quieter, meaner. Sometimes it ends because a person notices one thing out of place, one domestic detail too ordinary to prepare for. And that was our story, or at least the end of it. It was a Thursday in early October, rain tapping against the windows, gray light in every room. The kind of afternoon that makes everything feel muted, safe, contained. I remember thinking the weather made the house feel hidden, protected, like the world had wrapped itself in fog, which, looking back, feels almost absurd, because nothing was protected. I was just pretending. Daniel was supposed to work late. He'd texted around noon. Probably won't be home before 8. I had read it twice, used it like permission, and that was how Ryan ended up in my house. Again, Ryan had started as something I swore would go nowhere. That's how these things always begin, with language designed to make betrayal sound smaller. Just lunch, just talking, just emotional, just one mistake. There's always a just, a word people use when they're shrinking something they know is too big. By the time it became physical, I had already crossed enough lines that one more barely registered. And that terrified me, though I wouldn't admit it. Because the scariest part of doing something wrong repeatedly is how normal it starts to feel. Ryan left at 5:10. I know because I watched his taillights disappear through rain. And as always, the moment he left, guilt flooded in. Not while he was there. Never while he was there. That was part of the sickness. Guilt always arrived after, like a bill. Before leaving, Ryan used the guest bathroom off the hall. I heard the water run. He dried his hands, came out smiling, kissed me once, left, and I didn't think about that bathroom again. Not once. I straightened cushions, loaded a few dishes, wiped a counter, performed innocence, the little rituals of pretending nothing happened. And I actually believed I'd put the day away. Then I heard Daniel's keys at 5:42. Far too early. My entire body reacted before my mind did. Cold rush. Panic. I looked around wildly. What did I miss? Was there a glass out? Did Ryan leave anything? Was there a scent? A shoe print? A disaster hiding in plain sight? I checked everything obvious. That was my mistake. I checked the obvious, not the invisible. Daniel came in damp from rain, slightly irritated. Storm shut the site down early, he said. He kissed my cheek, dropped his keys. Completely normal. And my pulse started settling. Maybe I had gotten away with it. Maybe I had been lucky. I almost smiled. That thought still sickens me. Then he said, "I'm using the bathroom," and walked down the hall. I barely looked up. Because why would I? Why would towels matter? He was gone maybe 30 seconds. Then he came back holding one of the guest towels. Not accusing, not suspicious, just puzzled. And somehow, that was worse. Because suspicion can be managed. Puzzlement turns into questions. Questions become chains, and chains tighten. Why is this wet? Simple question. Harmless on paper. But I felt something inside me drop. I laughed. Too quickly. Oh, I washed my hands. Instant answer. Instant lie. He frowned. In the guest bathroom? And there it was. The first crack. Because he was right. I never used that sink. Ever. It was decorative, practically. Even guests barely used it. And now I had to explain behavior that didn't exist. Maybe I grabbed the wrong towel, I said. Weak. Thin. Daniel said nothing. Just looked toward the hallway, then back at me, thinking. I hated when he thought quietly. That meant he was assembling things. Then he asked, "Why are there 2 damp towels?" My blood froze. 2. I hadn't even noticed. I had only seen 1. Now the room seemed tilted. Because details kill lies. They multiply faster than explanations. I said maybe I had wiped something up. Even as I said it, I heard how desperate it sounded. Daniel walked back into the bathroom, looked at the mirror, touched the sink, then said, "There are water spots all over this mirror." Pause. "The soap's almost empty." Pause. "And," he looked at me, "why does it smell like men's cologne?" And suddenly the room was airless, because I hadn't noticed any of those things. He had, which meant he was already ahead of me. Was someone here? There it was. No shelter left. The question. Direct. Terrible. And I lied. Of course I lied. No. Too fast. Way too fast. And Daniel caught the speed of it. I saw him catch it. That tiny change in his face. A suspicion hardening. Then he disappeared back down the hall. I should have confessed then. I know that now. Because what happened next was worse. He came back holding a coffee mug. White ceramic. Ryan's mug. Forgotten on the guest bathroom shelf. A stupid, impossible detail I missed. And with it, everything ended. Daniel looked at the mug. Then at me. Not angry. Just wounded. And that expression still hurts more than if he'd screamed. "Tell me the truth." Quiet. Almost gentle. I started crying before speaking. Not out of virtue. Out of collapse. Because the lies were dead. I told him about Ryan. Not every detail. But enough. Enough to break something. He sat down. Hands folded, staring at nothing. Long silence. Then, "In our house?" I nodded. And watched something leave him. Something I could not put back. He asked how long. How many times? Whether I loved Ryan. That question nearly destroyed me. Because the answer was no. And somehow that made it uglier. I had wrecked a marriage for something I didn't even call love. Then he asked the question I still hear in dreams. Was our life that empty to you? Not. How could you? Not. Who is he? But that. And I had no answer. Because betrayal rarely begins with one giant absence. Sometimes it begins with selfishness so small you barely see it growing. Until it has teeth. He laughed once, bitter. Disbelieving. I found out because of wet towels. And the absurdity of it made me sob. Because it was true. A marriage undone by damp cotton. He packed that night. No shouting. No shattered dishes. Just drawers opening. Zippers. Silence. He carried a duffel to the door. Stopped. And said without turning, "You didn't lose me when I found out. You lost me when you let him into this house." Then he left. And the sound of the door closing felt like a verdict. Ryan texted later, "Everything okay?" I stared at it for 10 minutes, then blocked him. Because suddenly the affair looked ridiculous. Cheap. Almost embarrassing in its smallness. All that destruction for something so unimpressive. The weeks after were brutal. Daniel didn't rage. Didn't beg. Didn't negotiate. He moved with terrifying clarity. Lawyer. Separation. Paperwork. A person doesn't move that cleanly unless grief has hardened into certainty. I asked once if counseling was possible. He said, If I can't trust what happened in my own house while I was working, what exactly are we rebuilding? I had no answer. Again. The divorce finalized 8 months later. Cold. Administrative. So much devastation reduced to signatures. I thought there'd be some dramatic emotional finality. There wasn't. Just paperwork. And emptiness. A year later, I saw him in a cafe. With someone else. Laughing. Relaxed. Lighter. And it hit me he looked freer without me. Which may be the cruelest realization regret can give. I left before he saw me. Sat in my car and cried over towels. Actual towels. Because grief attaches itself to absurd relics. A scent. A phrase. A bathroom mirror. A folded hand towel. Even now, when I see guest towel sets in department stores, I pause. Ridiculous, isn't it? How tragedy brands ordinary objects. Most people see linen. I see collapse. People think relationships explode. Sometimes they erode. Quietly. Then break over something microscopic. A wet towel. A forgotten mug. Soap used too much. Water on a mirror. Evidence so mundane no liar thinks to hide it. And what haunts me most is how close I came. If Ryan hadn't washed his hands, if Daniel came home 10 minutes later, if the towels had dried, if one coffee mug hadn't been forgotten, maybe everything survives a little longer. Maybe the lie keeps breathing. But maybe that's another lie too. Because eventually something was always going to give. If not towels, something else. Truth has a way of surfacing through cracks you never inspect. And for me, truth came folded beside a sink. In a bathroom no one was supposed to use. Because he noticed the guest towels were wet. And from that tiny detail, everything unraveled.